Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Brighton Jazz School podcast. As ever, we've got a fantastic show lined up for you. It's really Piano Players Week this week. We've got the Amazing Bud Powell Volume 1 as our featured album of the week. We've also got the fantastic Dave Drake, who's a local, young, very young piano player here in Brighton. So he's featured in the guest artist interview this week. And we're also going to feature a track of the week from Dave's recent concert at the Brunswick. So stay tuned to that right at the end. Dave is a fascinating interview, it really is. He really has his head screwed on for a 16-year-old, it's unbelievable, and he can really play the piano. So if you're ever in town and you're at the Brunswick or you fancy some great live music, Dave is often found playing at the Brunswick at the jam session every Tuesday. So come and check him out, he's really a name to watch, and we're very excited to have him on the show. So more on that later. We hope you enjoy the show. As ever, please tune in, subscribe, keep up to date, go to the Brighton Jazz School website, www.brightonjazzschool.com. You can find us on iTunes, sign on the forum, leave questions, comments, anything you want. Like I said, I really want this podcast to be as interactive as possible, so please join in the fun. Hi and welcome to Album of the Week. This week I've been revisiting another fantastic album, the Amazing Bud Powell Volume 1. For me, this is some of Bud's greatest work. The album details 2 recording sessions, the first which was recorded on August the 9th, 1949, where Powell performs with his quintet, Fats Navarro, Sonny Rollins, Tommy Porter and the great Roy Haynes on drums. He's also featured in a trio with Roy Haynes and Tommy Potter. In the second recording, which was recorded on May the 1st, 1951, Powell performs with his trio Curly Russell and Max Roach, and for me that's some of the most exciting trio playing that we've ever heard. His composition On Poco Loco, which means a little crazy, is featured here, and I think it displays Powell's impressive inventiveness as a composer. He uses interesting harmonies, rhythmic interest, and in general just really great arranging. And also it was really one of the first recordings to introduce the Afro-Cuban music and rhythms. The album was eventually remastered and reissued on CD in 1989 with additional and alternative takes. The version is also available along with Powell's 1947 Roost session. I think that's one of the very first Bud Powell recordings, and now it's available on the complete Blue Note and Roost recordings, a 4-disc box set. So who was Bud Powell and what did he contribute to the music? Well, as a piano player, he had the amazing ability to play extremely fast tempos using arpeggios and chromaticism, often exploring harmonic progressions in very unexpected ways. He would use Lydian chords. He would use chords made of fourths, which is a technique that's often associated with more modern jazz piano, popularized by McCoy Tyner. But Powell was doing that, in the late 40s. He expressively used Charlie Parker's language that he came up with on the saxophone by playing that on the piano. But he did more than that. He was creating his own identity within that language. He's putting his own spin on what Charlie Parker did on the saxophone. And he was also able to combine bebop with his unique phrasing and a more pianistic and virtuosic approach that came directly through influence by Art Tatum. There's a story that Art Tatum went into a club where Powell was playing, and they were good friends, and during conversation Art Tatum commented on Bud Powell's left hand, saying that it was always just playing chords. So Bud Powell was a little bit put off by this and went on to the second set, playing the whole set with just his left hand, which is quite something. And apparently the two then sort of laughed about it and went out and had a few beers. Powell was a musical genius, but he was also a very complex man. He was admitted to Creedmoor Psychiatric Centre in November 1947, one of many stays in psychiatric centres around New York. He was subjected to electroconvulsive therapy, which caused severe memory loss. This obviously had an impact on his playing. Powell suffered from mental illness throughout his later life, possibly triggered by a beating by the police in 1945. Powell was also an alcoholic, and it had a profound effect on his character, making him aggressive. Despite that, the stories say that Powell was a very gentle man, very quiet, very introspective, but but had a fierce appetite for knowledge. In 1959, he moved to Paris with Buttercup, a childhood friend. Buttercup became a sort of minder for Powell, and she didn't always have his best interests at heart. She would give him a very small allowance, which he was allowed to spend on beer, but she was really trying to control his alcohol addiction. By then, he was displaying very erratic behaviour, and so because of that, she took it upon herself to dose him up with various drugs to keep him under control, to the point where it really stopped him functioning as a person. During those years in Paris, he had a fairly successful time musically, recording with Kenny Clarke, Coleman Hawkins and Dexter Gordon. In 1963, Powell contracted tuberculosis and returned to New York the following year for a return engagement at Birdland. But after that concert, little else was seen of him in public. Powell was hospitalized in New York after months of increasingly erratic behavior and self-neglect. He died on the 31st of July 1966 of tuberculosis, malnutrition and alcoholism. Several thousand people viewed his procession in Harlem. The pianist Bill Evans paid tribute to Powell in 1979 by saying, "If I had to choose one single musician for his artistic integrity, for the comparable originality of his creation and the grandeur of his work, it would be Bud Powell. He was in a class by himself." The book, written in 1986, Dance of the Infidels, A Portrait of Bud Powell, was the inspiration behind the film Round Midnight. The film was inspired by the lives of Bud Powell and also Lester Young, in which Dexter Gordon played the lead role. I really hope you go away and listen to these albums. The Amazing Bud Powell, Volume 1 to Volume 5, is a real great way to check out different areas of his life. The Amazing Bud Powell was recorded between 49 and 51. Volume 2 was recorded in 53. Volume 3 was recorded in 57, called Bud, The Amazing Bud Powell. Volume 4 is called Time Waits, The Amazing Bud Powell. That was recorded in 58. And finally, Volume 5, which is called The Scene Changes, is recorded in 1958 as well. So please check them out. This has been Album of the Week, and we'll see you next time. Hi guys, and welcome to the Brighton Jazz School Artist Interview. We have a very young special guest on today. His name's David Drake. He's a very talented and I'll say young again because I really think that should be emphasised. Incredible talent. Welcome, Dave. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for inviting me down.
You're very welcome. Again, Dave's a regular at the Brunswick, so if you haven't heard him play, do come down and check him out. You'll be blown away. So, Dave, I just want to ask you a few kind of questions just to get started. I know many people have been asking, how you get into jazz at such a young age and how you develop so quickly. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I have quite a lucky sort of background really, because my dad introduced me to jazz really early on. Mm-hmm. He's always been an avid jazz fan, and our house is like a warehouse full of music really. Yeah. And I don't know, I think you shouldn't be pressured too much, because my dad never forced me to listen to anything. Mm-hmm. It was always just available to me.
Great.
So I suppose if I were going to make any sort of, if I was going to give someone advice, I'd just say give them the option, because my dad gave me piano lessons when I was quite young.
Right.
Well, he didn't give me them personally, but he got me a piano teacher. Mm-hmm. And I think he never forced me to do anything, He said, you don't have to do this, he wasn't trying to force me to become a musician or force me to do anything.
Sure.
But it was always kind of there. And it wasn't until even more recently that I really started properly getting into jazz. It would just been something that was there. Mm-hmm. But then I developed a more kind of, I want a much stronger interest in the music. So I think, just making sure that they have an option to do it, that would be the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you have formal classical training to start with?
Not really, no, not at all. I had I had a very large blues improvisation book, and that was where it all kind of began. Yeah. I was doing a lot of New Orleans piano, Professor Longhill was one of the big guys for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And all that style. I mean, it wasn't until more recently that I've started catching up on the classical music. Yeah. Just getting some Bach fugues down and just to get my hand independent self and get a bit of chops together. But I mean, I've known loads of people that have done the classical music first, but I mean, for me, it was just the way that it came.
Yeah. Great. And why the piano? Have you always had a piano in the house, or?
I don't. Well, I mean, it was just that my dad got me piano lessons.
Sure.
Really, it wasn't something that I specifically chose. It was when I was 4 or 5, when he got me my first piano lessons. Just the very basic learning to navigate the instrument.
Yeah, sure.
And he's actually a guitarist himself.
Okay.
But, not a professional now, but he just introduced me to the piano, and that was it.
Great. Okay, and just, I don't know, name me a few people that you really listen to. Some piano players, not necessarily just piano players, but people that you really aspire, to look up to as role, jazz musical role models.
Well, I mean, the first guy that I really have to dedicate pretty much everything to has to be Bud Powell. It was the first musician, full stop, be it on any instrument, other than maybe Bird, that really kind of blew me away to such a huge extent. I remember being obsessed with that tune, Tempest Fugit.
Yeah.
And, everything about his playing, the fire, the kind of intensity in this, these strangely kind of moving melodic lines and whatever, and it was just everything about it really drew me into it. That Amazing Bud Powell Volume 1, The Jazz Giant, all those albums, were huge impact. Then, later on, I got into some, of the later on fellas like Herbie, Bill Evans, McCoy.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I suppose if I was going to say who I'm listening to now, I listen to a lot of, the New York scene, I think, at the moment. One of the real big guys in my life has been Aaron Parks, and he's a real phenomenal musician. He'd probably be, I'd say he's my favourite musician, alive today. And he's got this whole really incredible approach to music, really kind of positive and very, very open style in his playing, and that really, really attracted me to his playing.
Sure.
So I've been trying to aspire to a little bit more of that.
Yeah. I mean, he's the one thing that you mentioned, Bud Powell. I mean, for me, I think you'll probably agree. Well, maybe you won't. But let's find out. The musical flow of his ideas, the naturalness of his playing, and certainly for me, Aaron Parks has that, that gift of being able to flow.
The phrases are just so rich. Every phrase takes you back, yet it doesn't feel at all kind of imposing or forced. That's another really important thing for me, is not really forcing an idea, not ramming a phrase down someone's throat. It feels like a real story develops from Aaron or Bud Powell or any of the real major guys. It feels like there's actually a story rather than just a set of phrases being stuck together. It really feels like they're taking you somewhere.
Absolutely. And just in general, your kind of philosophy on jazz. I kind of ask everyone this question, what is it about jazz that makes you want to play it? What's the kind of driving force behind playing this kind of music?
I suppose if I'm going to pin it down on any one thing, I think it's just got to be the spontaneity. It's the only art form where you can really actually create ideas in the moment. I mean, we all use stock phrases every now and then, and to be fair, the actual amount of improvised music, in quotation marks, that we do is sometimes quite limited. But if you're actually going to push yourself to do something which is improvised in that moment, that's really appealing to me. Definitely. And composition as well, that's another really big thing. Just being able to make my own kind of map for soloing over, that's a really cool thing. Absolutely.
Well, great. I mean, let's just talk about some current projects that you might have. I know you've got an upcoming gig on this coming Sunday, the 22nd. Anything a bit further along the line, maybe in the next couple of months?
Not in the diary yet. I mean, I've got a couple of gigs that are yet to be finalised with this upcoming band. Because, I mean, this project is mainly my compositions.
Sure.
So this is a chance for me to put my compositions into a band's context. And really get it out there. Because I'm doing quite a lot of composition at the moment. And that's always been a big thing for me. Ever since really pretty much the beginning. I've always just loved being able to compose and just, making my own little piece of kind of me in a way. And it's been something that, you know, be it for the blues tunes that I used to write or whatever, it's just been a real good way of like expressing yourself or anything like that. And I mean, I still do it like all the time today, and I mean, I have to throw away a lot of stuff that I'm not so into. But I think, you know, being able to play your own tunes on a gig as well gives a whole different vibe. It's much more kind of your music. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, we hear standards a lot, and there's still, you know, everyone loves standards, and when they're played well, there's like nothing better. But it's great to have that kind of individuality as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's great. You know, you mentioned the blues, and you mentioned, you know, some of the what I call the serious players, Bud Powell and the bebop guys, and you know that really comes through in your playing, and it's so nice to hear someone as young as you who has absorbed that music. You know,
like it's all thanks to my dad. Like, everything pretty much everything I have, I owe to my dad.
Great, there you go. Big shout out to Dave's dad there.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen. Every guest I ask, you know, if they can offer up an improvisation tip for our jazz students. Can you? I realise I'm putting you on the spot here a bit, but can you give us your jazz improvisation tip of the week?
Well, I suppose if I were going to make any one tip, it would be to not try and analyse or criticise your own playing too much in the instant.
That's a good one.
So, for example, like at the jam, like today, don't get into that mindset of, oh, hang on, look, there's loads of people watching me. What are they going to think of me? I've got to play a phrase that's going to make them all give me compliments, and I want some people to really be following me. I don't want to. You shouldn't, like we said this before we came in. Just this kind of like not trying to impress people too much. I mean, because in a way, like that's giving them what you think they want, and at the end of it, you just have to let yourself go. And stop. Like, don't be trying to analyze what you're doing. Just as much as you can, be kind of completely free of the instrument. And that's the other thing, you know, like this free is a sort of a funny one, because like effectively we're all free at the end of the day. You know, it's just another human, an instrument. So just trying to let yourself go as much as you can, even if it does mean, you know, you're playing your stock phrases or whatever. But just being as kind of open with the instrument as you can, and just letting yourself go.
That's great. And you know, it's a hard thing to do as well, because
it's tough. I mean, you have to practice to do that.
Especially at jams, because you know the jam session is sort of a sacred thing. It's like, you know, it's existed ever since, you know, pretty much the birth of the music. And it is almost a showcase, isn't it? It's a sort of place where musicians can kind of, you know, get to know how other musicians play. And there's a lot of sharing. You know, it's not just all about, you know, this is what I do and check me out. You know, it would be awful if people would, you know, thought of it in that way. I think
the main thing for me about a jam is just listen. You know, like really, really listen to the other guys up there. If you do that, like the sum of the parts will be so much greater.
Absolutely,
because it's not just any one individual at any one time. You know. The guy I really love, just to drop his name, is Terry Pack, just because he's such a reactive bass player. You know, you can just tell whenever he's up there, he's just got like every part is like listening to. So I mean, you know, just making sure that you're aware of everything that's going on is great. I mean, even when you're soloing, like that would be my second tip. Is you know, even in your solo, listen to everyone else. You know, like. React to what the drummer's doing, or react to like, you know, that note that the bass player just played. If he just played a tritone, you know, like take it into account or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And Terry is great at that. You know, I've played with Terry for quite a while, and you know, we've got the trio, and that's the reason I love playing with him, because he really does listen and interact. And for me,
well, that's what jazz is all about.
It's what it's about, absolutely. Yeah, and that's really evident in your playing. You know, you're reacting to people all the time, and you're responding and call and response. And I guess that goes right back to the blues, you know, influence into jazz. But
that's the other thing. Like, you know, it's another thing that's kind of, you know, it's pretty unique to like jazz. But I mean, obviously, like jazz inverted commas, really, because jazz is such a broad term now. It's getting a little bit difficult to use it. So I mean, you know, just like. Improvised music is all about that kind of the playing off each other and really going somewhere as a unit. You know, that's the thing I love about the band I have at the moment. I've gathered some really, really strong musicians who I'm, you know, absolutely privileged to be playing with. You know, they really push me along fast. Yeah. And, you know, they're always just reacting to the stuff that's going on, and they're always pushing you in the right direction. But, I mean, I shouldn't say pushing. I mean, just, like, being kind of supportive. That's the main thing. You know?
I know what you mean.
Not necessarily pushing. I mean, that might be the wrong word. Not necessarily trying to build it into a climax. But actually following what you're doing and like living and kind of breathing with what you do.
I think breathing is a good word. You know, you breathe together, supportive. All of those words really describe it. And you know, as you said, there's no feeling like it when you feel that you have that support there to explore. You know. All the deep corners of Stella by Starlight, and then, you know, one of your own compositions. Well, listen, we're running out of time, but Dave, thanks so much for joining me, and it's been fascinating talking to you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for asking me down, for sure.
No problem. And really check out, where can we hear about your upcoming performances? Is there a website?
There isn't a website yet.
Okay.
There is going to be one soon, hopefully. I've been discussing this, and I'm going to be getting it up and going in the near future. Okay. And I'll be putting more gigs up there. I'm going to have some more stuff with my own band, hopefully. Great. And there'll be some more things to come, definitely. Excellent.
I believe there's some things on YouTube that people can check out.
Yeah, those are relatively old.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I was only 13 or 14 when I'm not sure if it was maybe I was 14. 15, 13, 14. I can't remember. Yeah. Either way, they're slightly older. You know, I think I'm going to be putting out some recordings from this gig that I have on Sunday.
Great.
And that'll be a much more updated version.
Great. Well, we're all looking forward to it, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing where you go with the music, and you know, folks, really check Dave out, Dave Drake. You know, type him into YouTube, and you know, follow this guy. He's going to be a serious player. So, thanks again, Dave, for joining us.
Thank you, man. And thanks for the kind words.
It's a pleasure, and we'll see you down at the Brunswick. See you around town.
Yeah, man.
At some
see
point.
Wayne McConnell at the Brunswick.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Welcome to the student information section. In the Learn to Play session this week, we were looking at the usage of the diminished scale in jazz. Now, it's a fascinating scale, and it's got a very distinctive sound. We talked about the theory of it, the fact that there's only really 3 diminished scales because of the symmetry of the way the scale works. You've got the D-flat diminished scale, the D diminished scale, and the E-flat diminished scale. Now, the D-flat diminished will also work with E, G, and B-flat diminished. And the D diminished will also work with F, A-flat, and B, and the E-flat diminished will also work with G-flat, A, and C. The half-whole diminished scale outlines a dominant 7th chord with a lowered 9th and 5th. And these are usually good examples for a flat 9 chord, so C7 flat 9, you would use the C whole half scale. And that's a really good choice. John Coltrane used that sound a lot. The other type of scale is a whole half, where you've got a whole step or a tone in the first interval. And actually, the whole half diminished scale is just a second mode of the half whole diminished scale, if that makes sense. Don't worry if this is blowing your mind a bit. Try and refer to the handout if you've still got it, and all will be clear. The whole half diminished scale outlines a fully diminished 7th chord, and thus can be used over diminished chords. Next time you're practicing your 2-5-1s, turn the 5 chord, the dominant chord, into a 5 flat 9, a dominant 7th with a flattened 9th. That will then give you the sound that you can use the diminished scale with. So what I recommend you do is practice just the diminished scales with the corresponding chords around the cycle of fourths, up and down 2 octaves, and also in broken thirds, because we use a lot of thirds in jazz improvisation. So if you practice your scales, not just diminished chord scales, but any scale, if you practice them in thirds, broken thirds as well, then you're more likely to be utilizing some of the fingerings that are likely to happen during improvisation. You have to be a little bit careful with diminished scales because of the symmetry of the way the scale works. They can end up sounding very mathematical. And there's endless books out there on patterns, on how to construct decent sounding patterns using diminished chords, diminished scales. But just be wary, you don't want to sound contrived. You don't want to sound like you've learnt these patterns. Check out John Coltrane. He was a master of the diminished scale, and more modern players as well, like Woody Shaw, Stan Getz, Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea as well. They all use the diminished scale extensively. It's a big part of the modern jazz sound, and I really urge you to check it out. Make sure you practice it in all 12 keys, corresponding flat 9 chords, learn the whole half-step diminished scale for diminished chords as well. But most importantly, just listen and be able to identify the diminished sound when you hear it in your records. Identify it, get the sound in your system, practice it. Never try and just learn a lick and then play that, force that into your playing. It never works. It has to come from a natural place. So make sure you absorb the sound and practice it, in all 12 keys, and it will come out naturally. Once you've got these diminished scales under your fingers, you know where to use them, start practice them on your favourite standards. Start with something simple, like Autumn Leaves. You can use it on the D7. You got the minor 251 there. In general, they do work pretty well, diminished scales that is, work well on minor 251s and tunes that are in a minor key. Something like Softly as in a Morning Sunrise, Beautiful Love, or minor blues like Mr. PC. They'll work really well on those minor 251s. And the reason for it is just a richer, darker harmony. Works well in minor keys. In the Learn to Listen class, we've been looking at the jazz singers, the likes of Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan, the kind of trio of the classic vocalists of that period. We also have been checking out the slightly more modern singers who really brought their own personalities to jazz singing, Betty Carter and the underappreciated Abbey Lincoln. We paid special attention to the album An Audience with Betty Carter. It's personally one of my favourites, recorded on between the 6th and the 8th of December 1979, which includes Betty Carter singing, John Hicks on piano, Curtis Lundy on double bass, and Kenny Washington on drums. I think it really displays Betty Carter at her best. She absolutely pulls these tunes around. Her version of My Favourite Things is just really, really epic. And some of her great compositions, Tight, Fake, So... I Think I Got It Now, just some great tunes. Sounds, the opening track, it's absolutely fantastic, and it really captures the live audience, the appreciation, the love, and the interplay between these marvellous musicians. John Hicks on piano, such a great pianist. Curtis Lundy and Kenny Washington, just a fantastic rhythm section. So yeah, take the time to check that one out. It's a really great album. We also listened to a few tracks from Abbey Lincoln's vast discography right from the beginning. Her first album in 1956. She was in good company right the way through her career. She had she had the Benny Carter Orchestra, Marty Page Orchestra, on that particular recording, Abbey Lincoln's Affair. And then after that, 1957 saw an album called That's Him, released on Riverside, featuring Paul Chambers, Max Roach and Wynton Kelly. It doesn't get much better than that. Right the way through, she's played with Coleman Hawkins, Stan Getz, Hank Jones, and some of the young lions of jazz, Roy Hargrove, Kenny Barron, Pat Metheny, Steve Coleman, Nicholas Payton, Bobby Hutcherson. She's had a really varied career. A highlight for me is quite a late album, 1991, called You Gotta Pay the Band. And that was released on Verve, with Stan Getz, Hank Jones, Charlie Hayden, Mark Johnson, and Maxine Roach. Absolutely just brilliant album. You got to check that one out. And another one, a year later, released in 1992 on Verve, called When There Is Love, and that's with Hank Jones. She's just a great songwriter, great delivery of songs, inspired very much by Billie Holiday, but she's really got her own thing going on. And like I said, she's a bit of an unsung hero of the jazz vocalist world, so really check her out. Give her the time. She's just a superb artist. And of course, you can join us on the Learn to Listen course every Thursday from 6 until 8 p.m. at the Brunswick. You're more than welcome to join us. It's such a great way to listen and to share music, and you'll learn a lot about the history. Perhaps you'll learn about people you've never heard of, or people that you know their names but you don't know what their music is. and we do take you right through the history of jazz. So it's a very informative but very relaxed and very fun learning environment. And with that, join us next week to find out what we do in the next session's Learn to Play and Learn to Listen class. Well, it's come to that time in the podcast where we actually get to listen to some music, and this week is great. We're featuring Dave Drake, his recent gig at the Brunswick. This is entitled The Last Book, and I think you'll agree, Dave really is going places with his piano playing. He's such a great guy and a fantastic piano player. If you're ever at a loose end, or even if you're not at a loose end, come down to the Brunswick on a Tuesday and you'll hear him play in the flesh. Always a great night. And as ever, please sign up to the Brighton Jazz School website, www.brightonjazzschool.com. Click on subscribe, check out this podcast, check out the future podcasts, stay in touch by the forum, or email me at brightonjazzschool@gmail.com. In the meantime, I look forward to seeing you next week, and I'll leave you in the capable hands of Dave Drake and his composition, The Last Book.